Greetings, salutations, and what's up? Okay, so this is the first of a series of videos that I'm going to do that are going to review media. And I am the host of this channel, John F. Allen, the original media man. So I'm going to review books, I'm going to review music, and I'm going to review movies and television. So each video will center around a specific movie, album, a television show, or a book series. And sometimes I will review tech and video games. So today we are going to review Miles Davis's Bitches Brew. And this album is one of my favorites from Miles Davis. Let me go into a little bit of detail about me. I'm a huge fan of jazz music, and I have been from the time I was a little kid up until now. I'm 55, so let's just say at 5 years old, I've been listening to jazz for 50 years. And I went back prior to my birth to the bebop era and big band era, listening to jazz at the feet of my grandparents. Jazz and blues were their things. So that was definitely something that influenced my musical taste as I grew up in the 70s and 80s and was a young adult in the 90s. So this particular album, Miles Davis's Bitches Brew, I'm going to give you a little bit of history about it. So I have some notes here. This was a significant and transformative album for Miles Davis, but it was also very pivotal and transformative for jazz music as a whole. This album was recorded from August 19th to August 21st in 1969, the year before my birth, at Columbia's Studio B in New York City. The final tracks were edited and pieced together by producer Tio Macero, who has also played a crucial role in shaping the album's sound. It's said that Miles was influenced by contemporary rock and funk music, as well as work of English composer Paul Buckmaster, which contributed to the album's rock-influenced arrangements. So in this era, of the late 60s and the early 70s, you had jazz transforming, and it was going from that bebop era into a new direction, but it was also being influenced by popular music of the time, and most popular music of that time was rock and roll, and followed by, I would guess you say, the Motown sound or whatnot, which had its preeminence in the 60s, and then the emergence of funk music, which had its origins in the late 60s throughout the 70s. So this particular album, Bitches Brew, became one of jazz's greatest albums and the progenitor of the jazz rock genre. So a lot of people who were into rock, like the psychedelic stuff from the late 60s and early 70s, were liking the trippy and psychedelic sounds which this album's tracks produced. So you're going to hear a lot of that. And it's safe to say that a lot of people back then were high, a lot of the performers and listeners, and so this was something that enhanced that experience for a lot of people. And then those who weren't obviously enjoyed it as well, but there was that trippy, that psychedelic type of sound, And that's what Miles Davis emphasized with this album, breaking out of that bebop era and moving into something that was going to revolutionize jazz and also infuse it with elements from other genres of music, specifically rock, funk. So, that all being said, I enjoyed this album a lot. I've listened to it a lot over the years. This is not the first copy that I have had. This is the second copy of this album that I've had. And I think that and I'll show you the inside. This is a gatefold cover here. And then this is the front. And then this is the back. And of course, I showed you the inside. My favorite track on this album is Miles Runs the Voodoo Down. So this is going to be one of the tracks that influenced me with Miles Davis's work. Now, I'd listened to round about midnight tracks from the 50s and 60s that Miles Davis produced, but this was the one album that really was a turning point for me when it came to being a fan of Miles Davis's music. Now, there was a shift in the music that Miles Davis produced from this point forward into the 70s and 80s as it became more mainstream, and he was going through some creative and personal struggles or whatnot that influenced how his music sounded, and that's going to be more like covers of famous songs. Like he did a cover in the 80s of Human Nature by Michael Jackson, and this was at the incessant behest of his wife at that time, Cecily Tyson, who was like, Miles, you really need to do this song. And he was like, what? Why would I do that? And he did it, and it became a hit. But it was a product of that time. It was definitely not the Miles Davis that we were used to seeing or listening to in the 60s, 70s. Definitely not. So while I enjoyed that era of his music to some extent, I think the 60s and 70s, early 70s, were the primary times that I enjoyed Miles Davis's music. And when he performed with other artists such as John Coltrane, who was one of my favorite saxophonists, jazz saxophonists, especially from that era and that style of jazz, that genre of jazz, there was something so dynamic about it that I can't even describe it, other than to say that my enlightenment in that moment was at an all-time high. And so I encourage you, as a listener, if you're into jazz or you're just getting into jazz, that you take a listen to Miles Davis, and particularly this album. And if your influences or past musical taste are in rock, or specifically old school rock from the 60s and 70s, that you give this album a listen to, so that you can bridge that gap between pop, contemporary music, and jazz as it is presented in this album by Miles Davis. So that's going to wrap up this mini review of Brew by Miles Davis. I am going to be producing other videos where I talk about things. This is the first, so They will improve as I move forward with them. So, stick around. Things will get even better moving forward. And until next video, peace.